As my staff. Well, the log staff.
Maybe the staff is the answer. I didn't announce over that we were recording. I didn't announce, I just hit record and I didn't say it.
It says on my.
Great, well, that'll be fun for our YouTube viewers to see me talk about it. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. It is in fact 7:01 p.m., which means that I am running 1 minute behind on a very busy evening for us. So I will open the October 10th, 2024 meeting of the North Texas Archaeological Society. We've got several pieces of business to get to before we get to our wonderful, very Texas-specific Texas Archaeology Month presentation this evening that I am certainly looking forward to, and I know everyone in the room and on Zoom is as well. So, the first piece of business, and it is a big one, is that per our bylaws, NTAS officers are elected every 2 years. We have a slate of candidates for the 2025-2026 NTAS officers. I will introduce you to them this evening for those in the room. Our nominee for president is Alexandra Younger. Our nominee for vice president and looking to be re-elected for a 2-year term is Steve Lowe. The nominee for secretary is the wonderful Tommy Standifer. Our nominee for treasurer is a stranger to all of you, Gwen Durant. Our nominee for vice president of projects is Brian Luchford. Our nominee for publications editor is Molly Hall. Our nominee for historian is Charlene Irwin. Our nominee for internet chair is Hannah Rainey. And you're not getting rid of me for 2 more years, folks, so I'm not a nominee at all. My role is bestowed upon me for being immediate past president, Alan Rutherford. So, before we move on, are there any nominations from the floor for any of these positions? God, you guys are making my life easy. That's great. So then, with no opposition to this slate of candidates, they are elected by acclamation. Congratulations to all of you. And for the new officers, I look forward to working with you. And for the old ones, I'm so sorry that you have to continue working with me. I'd like to welcome some new members, Judith Abbott, Christine Maines, Bill Martin, Faith Morrow, and Diane Sloan. Several of these folks signed up this week post our DOS event. I'm going to assume that that is a direct relationship. NTAS currently has 265 members. We're looking to get over 300 before the end of the month. So our free NTAS memberships for students are available. Please see the NTAS sponsored student membership scholarship page on our scholarship page on the website. Our November 2024 guest panel will be current and former U.S. Army Corps of Engineers archaeologists who will be here to discuss the role of the United States Army Corps of Engineers in archaeological practice. One of them is in the room this evening with us and giving a thumbs down, but I'm sure that it will be a wonderful presentation. It'll be a little bit like our November presentation last year, wherein we are providing topics to our panel for them to pick and choose and discuss. And I think a big one for a lot of folks in particular is, what role does the Corps of Engineers play in archaeological practice, not only in the state of Texas, but beyond? So I think it's going to be very interesting. Please arrive early and ready to ask questions and we'll be here all night that night. Additional general announcements. Saturday, October 26th, SMU will be hosting their open laboratory day from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. It's a recurring event through December at least. For more information, please contact Brian Luchford. Matt Bollinger, who Brian has been working with at SMU's Archaeological Research Collections, provided this graphic on Facebook last week. This is what 9 months of effort for the North Texas Archaeological Society assisting at SMU looks like. So anybody who's been there, anybody who is thinking about going, or anybody who's just a member and wants to be proud of how we're contributing to the archaeological record, these are some staggering numbers. So thank you very much to everybody who has been involved so far. And if you want to go and be a lab rat for even a couple hours, it's a wonderful opportunity to do so. Breaking news, the air conditioning in there is apparently very good, which matters because it's going to be 95 degrees to the end of time. A reminder that the 2024 TAS annual meeting is coming up in Victoria. It's going to be held October 25th through 27th, 2024. I don't have a hotel room yet, but if you don't have a hotel room yet, like me, you should probably give them a call and get in there as soon as possible. It's wonderful timing to be held at the end of the month so we can have all of the other things that we're doing happen beforehand. Thank you to Katrina Nuncio, Jen Fricks, Glenn Lee, Chris Mice, James and Susan Everett, Dana Ritchie, Steve Lowe, Charlene Irwin, Elizabeth Bittner, Art Tallwater, Becky Shelton, and Jimmy Pereira for participating in the DOS Pioneer Heritage Festival outreach event, which occurred this past Saturday, October 5th. My understanding is it was well attended. We've got beautiful photos of the event. I'm certain that there will be a nice long newsletter post about it next month. So look forward to that. It is Texas Archaeology Month. We ordered additional NTAS t-shirts that are for sale for $10. So if you did not have an opportunity to order one when we did the original order, Molly has them this evening, and Gwen will likely have them in November, but this month is Texas Archaeology Month, so donate your $10, get a shirt, represent North Texas Archaeological Society so when people ask you questions and we get more members. 300. NTAS has several outreach opportunities in October and November. If you're interested in participating in any of the following events, please contact info@ntxas.org. Didn't Dig It will be this Saturday, October 12th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. In line with the comment I just made about the weather, it's going to be a beautiful October day, 95 degrees and sunny. I'm sure that the beverages will be cold and the fare that it's associated with will also have good food. So even if you're not volunteering to be there all day long, please come on out, check out all the things that are going on. Maybe give the folks standing at the table all day a little bit of a break, you know, to use the bathroom, have a drink, you know, that kind of thing. Grand Prairie Farmers Market is going to be Saturday, October 19th from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. This is a new event for the North Texas Archaeological Society. Thank you to Charlene Irwin for coordinating that and planning that. We're really looking forward to that opportunity. And finally, if you thought Texas Archaeology Month couldn't extend into November, you were wrong, because the Plano Archaeology Fair will be held on Saturday, November 9th, at which point we'll all celebrate a fantastic 6-week-long October. And NTAS will be participating in that event for, I believe, the first time. If it's not the first time, it's the first time in a long time. So please come out and join us for that. Finally, the NTAS Executive Committee voted unanimously to approve donating $250 to Texas Beyond History to continue being a sustaining partner in 2024. As with last year's donation, we are asking our membership to match or exceed that donation to one of our most invaluable sources for Texas archaeology and education. We are currently sitting at $150 towards that match. So we're already doing really well. NTAS will be and is currently this evening, starting tonight, holding a silent auction for 2 cats and a Lone Star Lithics poster. It's just the Lone Star Lithics. The print and frame, etc., all comes with it. It's been donated by Skipper Scott. All of the auction proceeds will be donated to NTAS. We'll start the silent auction tonight. We'll continue it through November. If you're on Zoom and you are interested in this and you are incapable of getting to our in-person meetings, let us know via the chat feature. The starting bid is from some guy named Alan Rutherford, and it's for $5. It's supposed to be silent, but I'm just trying to get everybody excited. So we will have that outside, and maybe next month we'll have the print in person, but probably not the cats. So at the end of all of this, we'll announce the winner at our December 7th Christmas party. If you're not in attendance, don't worry about that. I'll also send out a follow-up email after that, and then I'll figure out a way to get the print. I've been asked what the dimensions are, and it looks like it's about the length of 2 cats. I don't, otherwise, I'm not entirely sure, but I probably.
Not including the tails.
Not including the.
Tails.
Not including the tails, correct, yes. The head and body of 2 cats, about the length of that, and about the width of a cat and a half. So 2 feet by 12 inches, I don't know, yeah. I am going to, Skipper should be here presenting as part of the Corps of Engineers panel next month, and I'm hoping that he will be bringing this in person. If he does not, I will ensure that I get non-cat measured dimensions before the next meeting.
How much was that LG bid?
$5.
I got $6 here.
Add that to the list.
Will you take it?
I'll take it, but you don't have to give it to us this evening.
But there's just the auction bids.
The auction closes. The auction closes after our November 14th meeting. Sorry. We've got a lot of, for those on Zoom, we got a lot of questions about this. So if you want to in on this, you better get in on it because there's a lot of interest in the room. Any further questions on that? Wonderful.
And Alan, before you go to the next thing, you mentioned the annual meeting coming up in a couple of weeks. For any of the TAS members who are unable to attend that meeting, we do have online voting for things like the bylaws, for the officers for the next year, and for the budget for next year. I'm continually trying to get our members to think about voting online, even if you don't attend the meeting. So don't forget, it normally starts about 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday the 25th, and it will go sometime to about 2 o'clock on Saturday. So you can vote at home if you're a current TAS member. And I encourage you to do so. I especially ask you to vote yes on the bylaws. Thank you.
Wonderful.
The website.
And yeah, on the website, there'll be it's not there yet, but you can look at the website now to see the bylaws changes in color. You can look at the proposed budget and you can look at the officer nominees.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. Katrina? Well,
If it's cast or check, I can take it and pass it to Gwen, because I'm giving her the t-shirt money.
Done.
this has been the most crowd interaction I believe I've had in the entire time I've been president, and I appreciate every bit of it. The starting bid on those officers is $5. Go on the TAS website and start bidding now. With all of that being said, and thank you for your patience, I'd like to welcome our October 2024 guest speaker, our president-elect, Alexandra Younger. Sharing the whole bottom of the screen, Jimmy, do you know, have any thoughts on that?
No, if you try to minimize it and expand it again, I think go away.
It wouldn't be an evening without technical difficulties, folks. Apologies. So, nail it. Sorry.
Hello, everyone.
Hey,
My name is Alexandra Younger. I've heard my name a couple times already tonight. I was the principal investigator for this project with my company, Integrated Environmental Solutions. We're based in McKinney, but my office is based in Denton, Texas. So today, I'm going to discuss with you guys our recent excavations at Washington-on-the-Brazos site. It is often referred to as the birthplace of Texas. It was actually the original capital of Texas when it was a republic. Because of its association with a very important part of history, the THC, the Texas Historical Commission, intends on reconstructing some of the buildings from the early to mid-19th century pertaining to this period at the town site. And of course, these buildings also pertain to certain events that happened there and key players during Texas independence. My team and I began our excavations last fall to identify the domestic and architectural debris of these certain building loci. The purpose was to either find the foundations or artifacts pertaining to their construction to inform the planned construction of these buildings. So I'm going to discuss some of those findings with you today. But first, we're going to start with a little bit of the historic context and background of what previous investigations have been done. Okay, so the site is also a park with a museum. So let's see if this works. Oops, let's go back. Okay, I'm gonna use a mouse. All right, so this is kind of the main area of town site where we were conducting excavations. It also has a visitor center. There's the Star of the Republic Museum and an authentic 19th century plantation all on this site. The only replicated building there is the House of Independence, which is located where it was originally. So currently there is one building, and that's where the Texas Declaration of Independence was actually signed in 1836. Washington-Brazos is located on the west bank of the Brazos River, and it is just south of where the Brazos and Navasota rivers converge. It also spans across a floodplain and a terrace. And then, yeah, if you were to go to this town today, you would not see any of the original buildings or their foundations on the surface. Excavations began really after consultant Michael R. Moore conducted a very deep dive into the archival component of research about Washington. His synthesis regarding the town construction, the town layout, and certain lot ownerships really set the foundation for this investigation, no pun intended. Michael was previously the consultant for San Felipe de Austin. So if you were to go to San Felipe today, you would also see reconstruction of 19th century buildings pertaining to that town site, reflecting what would have been there. And San Felipe is also on the Brazos River, just downstream from Washington. So the park itself commemorates where in 1823, Stephen F. Austin established a headquarters for his colony in Mexican Texas. It was a political center before the independence was signed. San Felipe Austin, the Austin didn't survive the Texas independence. It was burned down by its own residents during the runaway scrape, when there was a lot of panic regarding conflict with the Mexican army and ultimately the fall of the Alamo. Here pictured is Dr. Sarah Chesney, who works at the park, and Michael Moore and myself on one of my visits to San Felipe. Michael has identified major differences between the archives, between the two sites. So, you know, for Austin County of 1823 to 1836 and Washington County of 1835 to 45, there are definitely different credit payment systems that they employed. So it was actually more difficult for him to trace kind of what materials were getting bought and what buildings they were actually going to. So it was really going to be up to us to answer some of those questions and fill in some of those gaps. One of those complications includes none of the original plat maps exist. We know that the town was surveyed twice, but you know, things like this archival information does get lost to natural disasters, floods. I can't tell you how many courthouses have burned down historically in the state of Texas, and that's where a lot of those things are stored. A lot of the historic information in this presentation really comes from a little bit from Richard McCaslin's book on Washington, but really by and large, this is all from Michael's work. All right, so in the Revolutionary era, Washington was situated on a historic road called La Bahia, at the La Bahia crossing of the Brazos. This is a trail that connected all the way into Louisiana and to Southwest Texas. So it goes from Goliad and it crosses the Trinity River. So this would have been a path that was forged by Native Americans originally, and then was utilized by early Spanish settlers. The Spanish used it to get between their missions and presidios in San Antonio to East Texas. Austin's colonists arrived in 1821. There were a series of filibusters going on in the early 19th century. It was hard to settle this region because of all the conflict. And the economy really ultimately started kicking off in the 1830s. People started settling around the Brazos River around this time. And then eventually that ferry boat crossing was built at the La Bahia crossing. So with lots of settlements, lots of goods and traveling up and down the Brazos River, we started to see some actual activity, people settling in the area. The town company, the Washington Town Company, was established when John W. Hall sold a portion of the Andrew Robinson tract in 1835. Robinson was his father-in-law. At the time that happened, there were 3 dwellings and a store. Hall had taken it upon himself to establish the grid of the town, but there really weren't a lot of buildings yet. So he had it first surveyed in varas. Varas is a survey method, just more of an antiquated one, but each vara would equal, say, 33 inches. Each block would have been 120 varas. Then it got resurveyed and probably imperial, and now you get the 334 square foot lots or blocks of the town. All right, so during the runaway scrape, people fled Washington. The loss of the Alamo created a lot of panic. A lot of folks from settlements took off. A lot of people died. Most of the people kind of went eastward. So some people had their town to come back to, like Washington. Others, like San Felipe, towns did not survive that. The Texas Declaration of Independence was signed on March 2nd, 1836 at the town of Washington by 59 delegates, each representing their settlements. On to the Republic period. So normalcy quickly returned to Washington. So it wasn't until 1842 that the final capital of the Republic was established. The temporary capital was at Houston. Second Congress got together, formed a committee and said, we need to figure out where our capital is going to be. And Sam Houston was like, it's gotta be Washington. A lot of people fought him on it. He fought hard to make sure it was Washington. He had a lot of reasons, but he just really felt Austin was too vulnerable at the time. So once he was inaugurated, the changes were underway. There was certainly a protracted economic boom and bust from the 30s into the early 40s. It started to kind of shrink again in the early 40s. But once the steamboats started coming in on the river, that started to shift. Annexation. Oh, there's Republic. Okay, annexation. Now coming to the United States. So annexation quickly followed. It was 1845 and 1846 that Texas became a state. And that was also a topic. It was very hotly debated at Washington. So okay, we've got an economic boom going on. We've got now more agriculture, cotton production, all that's moving up and down the Brazos. We got steamboats moving goods. So the economy is doing pretty well. So that was about the 40s to the 50s where Washington prospered. But the death knell, the nail in the coffin for Washington was they never converted to railroads. So Navasota and nearby Brenham got all the economy. So between the 1860s and 1880s, Washington population just tanked. People were pretty much just abandoning it. Oh, and if that's not enough whiplash for you guys, in 1852, a fire swept through and pretty much burned down most of the town. Oh, they did rebuild because the 50s was a prosperous period, but this is going to be an added difficulty to the archaeology. John Lewis said the same thing about La Bahia. With a town that's been burned down, it makes it a little bit more difficult to find what you're looking for, especially if things are made of wood. The earliest construction at Washington were pole cabins. Post oak would have been preferred. It was really hard. It could be hewn, but well, difficult. But there was also ash, elm, cedar. Those were more located in the bottomlands. The oak would have been kind of more available in the upland area. But those round log cabins would have gone up quickly, but most eventually were replaced with more permanent structures. But they definitely served as temporary housing or even businesses in that 1835 to 36 era. Ostensibly, a frame house would have just taken more time, more materials, tools, if you will, and skills. So red cedar for the frame houses would have been preferred. Okay, so Republic era, starting to see more sawmills moving into the area. They didn't stop hand hewing anything, but sawmills are starting to become more common. Cedar, oak, and ash were prioritized. Sandstone, limestone, all available locally in abundance. So that would have been part of the construction as well. There are some indications that the stone was more prominent than brick was at this time period. Dog trot cabins were essentially an upgrade from the pole cabin. This time you get 2 rooms instead of 1, bisected by a nice little breezeway. And then a lot of those dwellings would have been off of the main drag, Ferry Street. And then, yeah, some frame houses, and there were a few different styles of those as well. Statehood, annexation, remember, economic boom, more agriculture, more economy coming in and out. So in addition to the newer frame stores, you had even more, now we had more brick buildings appearing. Cedar still remained a very popular construction tool. And then sawmills were very ubiquitous by this point in time. Frame buildings didn't radically change. They might have just gotten nicer, fancier. And although brick making was really common by this point, we still actually don't know how old the brick kiln is or when it was brought in. So TPWD did a survey a while back. They found it. It's in the town site area, but they just couldn't pinpoint it to like when did they start actually using this brick kiln. So that's kind of one of our mysteries. The lots and block sales and deed records researched by Mr. Moore to identify the buildings, locations, owners. Additionally, he said that the records were different from San Felipe, so these promissory notes were just not as detailed as we would have liked. Also, he says that the upheaval of the revolution kind of delayed a lot of filing of deeds, so that was an added complication. So following the burning of the town, some reconstruction took place in the late 19th century, early 20th century. Washington was pretty much reduced to mostly like farmsteads. And then the state started slowly acquiring pieces of land and turning it into a park. So in this picture, you can see kind of like some of the features of the park already appearing. Some of that stuff's still there today, like the amphitheater. And then kind of the bottom right hand, kind of lower right hand side was still the Stegmuller property was still private at that time. So there was a series of excavations in the 60s. A lot of them kind of started out with A&M, TPWD, but the first report would have been Emott Davis and James Corbin. And then they were shortly followed by, we heard about her in the last presentation, Decimay Lorraine and her partner, Marcia Jackson in 1969. So most of those earlier investigations, there's a lot of trenching. And this was just because we had little to go on, low resolution information. So if you stretch a trench a really, really long distance, chances are you're gonna hit something. So they were doing a lot of exploratory archaeology at the time. Corbin and Davis didn't have a whole lot to talk about. They and the earlier excavations by A&M, all they were really looking for was House of Independence and trying to find some of the cross streets, right? We gotta identify where these roads are so we could start finding these buildings. So their results were relatively disappointing. Jackson and Lorraine did a little bit more intensive stuff in 1969. They excavated a series of trenches, and then when they started uncovering stuff, they moved on to greater excavation blocks. But they were really smart, and they tried to connect some of their trenches with Corbin's work. So to be honest, like what Lorraine and Jackson did really is what guided us the most in terms of like previous investigations. What else? Yeah, Texas A&M still did some other work in the area. They've done some geophysics, they've done some shovel tests, there was some work done for the visitor center. I liked that they put some emphasis on the pre-contact artifacts, because being where it is, it'd be kind of silly if you didn't find a Native American site or 2 or 5. And I think they even found some features, maybe a hearth and probably a lithic cache. But and then they did some little bit of geophysics, and some more geophysics was done down on the floodplain in 2010. But that didn't really pertain to what we needed. Oop, that was weird. Oh no, we lost it. Hold on, I'm using my notes over here. Okay, understand that these businesses weren't fixed businesses. They changed hands and function a lot over and over again. So that added some layers to our investigation. This map you're looking at was made by Dana Morris. He searched lot purchase records. The only flaw in his design was some of the dates were erroneous due to statements getting submitted at a later date. But this is the best we have to go by in terms of what might have been where in the town. So mind you, this was made in the mid to late 20th century. Okay, so from all this information, 11 priority areas were identified. And those 11 priority areas were going to be our areas of excavation, our areas of investigation to find a very specific list of buildings that would have been somewhere within these lots. And then of course they would have had a period. So these all part of what we were looking for included general stores, a tavern, an apothecary and a drugstore, a carpenter shop, a blacksmith shop, Sam Houston's office, and a dwelling. Some things we were very successful at finding, and other things might be wiped off the map completely. But I'm just going to kind of share with you guys more prominent stuff because we just don't have all the time in the world. All right, so with all the priority areas identified, Michael's synthesis has been done. The next step is to employ geophysical investigations. It's a widely used method, exploratory method ahead of excavation, ahead of testing, phase 2 testing. It's really should be used in a lot of scenarios. And then it can really dramatically reduce how much ground disturbance you do in an archaeological excavation. And this was a really good scenario to test that out. Not all environments are conducive to geophysical data. Luckily for IES, we have a pretty cool expert on staff who's good at this kind of thing. Christopher Goodmaster, he conducted EM and magnetometer survey within those priority areas. And then he followed up some of that with GPR, which is what you're seeing on the screen there is GPR. So he employed electromagnetic induction method and the magnetic susceptibility method because each kind of return results slightly differently. But in a lot of cases, they're really good to use in tandem. And oh, he found some stuff. And what he too identified that A&M also noted was there was a lot of disturbance, a lot of metallic noise across portions of this site. So in areas where there was less interference, we were able to use those anomalies he detected to start targeting our units where there might be foundations pertaining to these buildings. So our first priority area was the Hatfields Exchange. It was a two-story building. It was a grocery / saloon. So kind of like the quote, I'm quoting here, coffee houses or grog houses. These were just all clever terms, grocery, coffee, for a bar. And I learned more about 19th century bar terminology than I even set out to do on this project, but here we are. It's a frontier town, right, in Texas. Hatfields was probably the largest building at the time. There was a gambling hall on the second floor. That was what the government rented out for operations. There was even a Supreme Court held there. So only the seventh Congress met at the House of Independence. And then the 8th and 9th Congress after that met in the top floor of the Hatfield Saloon or Hatfield's Exchange. Okay. So its significance isn't just that they met there, but a lot of spirited debates happened here. One example is in March of 1845, members of the public were invited to this location to voice their opinions about annexation to the United States. First thing to note is that we found, oh, and a fun thing about that building, by the way, allegedly, they built a stairwell to the outside of Hatfield's Exchange so as not to tempt members of Congress to have a tipple before their meetings. So I love that. All right, so we really didn't find that many features here, very sadly. It was kind of negligible, to be honest. Nonetheless, we started recovering a lot of artifacts. And so we're feeling really good that, okay, we're at the Hatfield Exchange location. And what was also interesting is that a lot of those artifacts exhibited really high thermal alteration. So we're looking at a building that was probably burned down in the 1852 fire. In this photo, you will see that we did find one singular brick alignment. Couldn't tell you what it was for, we could speculate, but that was pretty much the bulk of it. This is the final product of that excavation there via drone. It looks a little wonky because we were stuck with a lot of tree canopy. But where you see that brick alignment in the northwest and the top left corner, if you will, is where 65% of the artifacts at that location came out, just in that area, those two kind of trench-looking excavation blocks. Notice also the soil here is poorly mantled. That is clay at the surface, which is not ideal for finding preserved archaeological sites, but it really wasn't hard to figure out why. Now, in the geophysical data, you see kind of a semicircular anomaly appearing in the top right corner, right? So that was our northwest corner on our grid. And here are the intersecting units that we put over that same anomaly and pertaining to Hatfield's Exchange. And then if we look at the historic aerials, we see that there's been quite a bit of terraforming in that little yellow box there. So it looked like somebody was trying desperately to control some of the erosion, because below that box is where it slopes down into a gully. So if you have artifacts on that landform in that soft, coarse, sandy loam on top, it's just going to melt right off with the artifacts straight into that gully. So that's probably a good explanation. It's tragic, but it's not an uncommon problem. So to recap what features we encountered, we can't offer up a whole lot of explanation for that brick alignment. Other discontiguous brick alignments, if you will, or clusters, were on the eastern portion of that priority area, really right where Hatfields would have fronted Ferry Street. But these brick were kind of haphazard. They weren't whole. They were badly weathered, kind of chemically and mechanically. So it looked like somebody was chucking it up along the fence line. There would have been a property fence line there when it was a Stegmiller property. So, and then we found barbed wire underneath it. So whatever it was, probably wasn't in primary context to begin with. What was significant about Hatfield is that we found artifacts pertaining to it. So in some way that's going to inform pretty well the reconstruction effort. So Hall and Lots Tavern was our second priority. It was a little bit farther north. So if you were there back in the day and you hopped off the ferry into town, you walked across the floodplain and up a steep incline to the terrace. This would have been the first building on your left-hand side. It was probably 20 by 40 feet with 2 chimneys on either side, the 40-foot fronting, probably fronting Ferry Street. It had a dwelling, several other outbuildings. Yeah, it might have had a print shop, a kitchen, it might have had a dwelling, a law office, and it could have had stables around it as well. To add to the complication, this was also the site of the park's original superintendent's homestead. So he had a residence nearby, or right next to this, kind of to the right off the screen there. And then several outbuildings and a water tower. So we were definitely going to find something. We didn't know what to expect, but we were definitely going to find something here. Our geophysical inspection was much harder to utilize in this scenario because of all that historic overprinting. And those 3 water lines, kind of those 3 parallel lines you see, were running from the residence. And then anything else you kind of see popping up really is just loud metallic stuff that we would want to go after. So the first, predictably, like the first feature we find is this head scratcher. It's partly made of cement. It's got the handmade brick kind of like cemented to it, and then there's some like big slabs of cut sandstone, of dressed stone, and it's kind of formed this rectangular shape, right? But the water line's going underneath this. We're like, what the heck's going on here? Like, is this original or not? So the current superintendent, Jonathan Thaler, he went back to his office, dug some photos out, and he finds like a photo of when the water tower was being removed and this little outbuilding in the middle of the photo that was kind of right where we were. And we had to dig through some like TPWD stuff to find out it was this like little shed relating to like volatile storage. And it's not in the aerial photo either. You can kind of see the water tower. You can see the residence and some of the outbuildings, but right in here, you know, who knows? So fun mystery, but our luck changed. We moved just a little bit north of that and we hit a handmade brick foundation. So we're like, all right, either we got a building corner or a fireplace, like whatever it is, we're excited. Turned out to be a Rumsfeld style fireplace. It wasn't too deep underground. Those were the full courses that we kind of exposed. Let's see here. So we got 1 fireplace. We know there are 2. So we thought, all right, we need to go 40 feet south or, you know, facing this to try to find the other one. So we did. We started opening stuff to the south and, you know, we found some weird artifacts and burn smears. And then we moved a little bit east and we found another weird foundation. This one was more kind of an L-shaped. And then it looks like it kind of collapsed inwards. And it was made of some kind of big angular blocks and some slab-like rocks, and they were all, I think, limestone, is what they were. So this could have also been a building corner. It could have also been a fireplace. I talked to Jeff Durst, and he thought, kind of reminded him of one he'd seen. It's a little hard to tell, but again, what Michael said about that Republic era, that the stone was more likely to be utilized as opposed to the brick. So maybe this is earlier construction. Maybe this is original column line. Maybe that brick came later, that Rumsfeld. But it did have some cool artifacts associated with it. We felt pretty good about those too. You got some hand-painted ceramics. You got some cranberry transferware and this really cool olive glass flask. And of course, we find a flask at a tavern, right? Apropos. And it's depicting a horse-drawn carriage over a railroad, and it had some words on it that said "Success of the Railroad." And as far as we can tell, it probably dates back to 1831, which would support that early construction of the tavern. We did choose to excavate a portion, just an edge of that foundation, just to kind of get a picture of how deep did it go. Can we kind of figure out what's going on here, but not much more. And then it had this really weird trench going into it in the south part. You see kind of this little trench that I partially excavated. It was chock full of cool artifacts, pardon me. And in fact, there were a lot of cool artifacts in this kind of southern extent of our excavations. We found a ton of print type as well, so we're feeling pretty good about being in the vicinity of a print shop. But some of the really notable ones, we did have a trash pit just to the right of it, actually. Anyway, so one of the notable ones here is this 1820s, it's 1820 Spanish coin depicting King Ferdinand. His bust would have been on one side, and then the Spanish royal coat of arms on the other. Not in great quality, but this is cool. I mean, we're looking at something really early, giving us our timeline at this location. And then here we had a gold pocket watch keys, or gold-plated pocket watch key on the left, pretty good quality. And then this 1831 dime with nearly no tarnish on it. Looked really amazing. We even found a 1925 penny, so we've got the full temporal representation in just money. So, let's see what else. Okay, so we also have this Bennington style porcelain doorknob. This one wasn't as diagnostic. This could have been mid to late 19th century, could have been early 20th. So whether it was park, residence, or Hallmark, who knows? But it's just a lovely specimen. And then this beautiful kaolinite clay pipe bowl with still a lot of the intricate designs on it. But my favorite from this location is like the most Texan artifact in our assemblage. So if you notice, in the middle of that star of Texas is the letter D, and above it would have said Texas in kind of an arch fashion. This was actually a button to a very specific kind of uniform. It was a Texas Dragoons uniform from the Republic era. This is fantastic. One of the last interesting things to happen was we scratched a little bit north of this location. We came across this weird brick rubble floor. We didn't really know what to make of it. But in Jackson Lorraine's documentation, it looks like they had found this. And we were able to confirm it by the presence of that brick pier that's in the top left. So that's the brick pier associated with the rubble floor. So what we were uncovering was kind of this segment. It would have been a separate building from Hallmark. We don't know what it was. And then it probably had some kind of shed porch attachment where they had a covered porch and they had these, like, some literature calls them mud steps. So it's kind of a cool find, but we didn't need to investigate any further on that. One of our smaller investigations included Houston's presidential office. When he moved to Washington from 1842 to 44, he took over McFarland's law office. Wasn't on Ferry Street proper, it was just kind of southwest on Cross Street. It was a modest 16 by 16 foot cabin. I don't even think there was glass on the windows, had some windows, had a door, had a chimney. So we targeted anomalies in this case, the geophysical, and they were fairly soft anomalies, but we did find a post mold, our post hole, if you will. This one's a very large one. They actually refer to these as stump molds. And then just 4 meters east of that, I think, or north, 4 meters north of that, we clipped another one. And so being 4 meters apart, kind of in the ballpark of 16 meters. So there's kind of one of our maps, and that's how far they were oriented to each other. The map's oriented, the top is west. But yeah, I would imagine if we were going to excavate farther, you either go 16 feet west or 16 feet east of those features to try and flip the other ones. There's a lot of weird artifacts in there just from some overprinting, but we still found 19th century stuff. So these are just some really cool notable ones. 1890 Indian head penny and a toy soldier. Another area of modest investigating was the Bethel Morris dwelling. This is located just east of Independence Hall. Where this particular 1835 dwelling was within the lot was kind of difficult to determine. We did not geophysically survey this one. It was previously by A&M, but I don't think we got to utilize their data. But it just would have been a very modest one-story structure with a porch. I believe a bachelor lived in it for a while, but it was also the location of the William Mockford tailor shop. And then all around it was, you know, a hotel, a gunsmith, stables. There's a lot of activity going on. You know, the hotel had dining. Oops. You're fine. Okay, so we didn't find any foundations, but we found something better. We found trash. So that was really exciting. So we intersected two pretty robust trash pits in our units. Most visible, what you can see is a lot of the brick and the mortar, a little bit of stone, but there was tons of architectural debris, lots of variety of domestic debris, and all of it was reflecting the activities in the vicinity, which was kind of cool. Food, dining, domestic stuff, hotel. The most prominent artifact was the faunal. We had these 3 bags are packed full of faunal remains, mostly bovine, pig. There was a variety of buttons and clothing accessories indicating a tailor shop. We also had smoking pipes. There was a lice comb made out of bone. We had horseshoes right from the stable. But the kind of like weirdly interesting one was this late 18th century to early 19th century trigger guard. So maybe that would have been something that pertained to the gunsmith, but it's a really early piece of artifact too. Additionally, we recovered an entire plate with blue transfer print. It's an Eton College design, pastoral scenery on it. I would have enjoyed just digging trash pits all day, but you know, our scope was not to do this artifact mining. Plenty of artifacts were recovered in the previous investigations, and a lot of it, I have to tell you, hasn't even been formally analyzed. So I'm just saying there'd be some pretty good master's thesis opportunities there. One of the more stunning artifact types that occur very frequently is this dipped earthenware. A lot of people refer to it as mocha-ware, but mocha-ware is actually just one of the types. And I just borrowed this from this website because we didn't really have any whole specimens. But the motifs are really cool. They can be more natural motifs with sort of dendritic patterns, or they can be these kind of like trippy, abstract, kind of cool stuff. Very distinct colors and patterns. But if you were to go to the museum there at Washington, they've got really cool examples of that. All right, so our pièce de résistance was the Hurd's brick buildings. This excavation, that is 98 excavation units on the screen. So we did the most work here. There were 3 brick buildings here originally. We don't know the precise dimensions of them. One of them was probably 85 feet long. Would have been constructed in the 1850s. It was mostly just kind of a warehousey to kind of store goods and stuff for sale. So probably would have contained a lot of domestics, probably maybe even construction materials. Our goal was to expose a portion of these buildings. Lorraine and Jackson had already kind of taken a crack at this. So we began with what we knew. Lorraine and Jackson actually mapped and photographed their features. If we orient it this way with north up, the left side of the screen would have been the Ferry Street frontage. So this is kind of where you'll see the bulk of our excavation exposing. Another nice thing that Christopher Goodmaster did was mosaic all of their cherry picker photos from their excavations. So we could use this to georeference where we wanted to start. And fences were no longer there, but the GPR did pick them up. So we were able, kind of that fence at the bottom here, we were able to start opening up around this because of the intervals of the poles. We're adding reflections to the GPR in that same pattern. So that was kind of a little fun thing we did. So this drone image just kind of picks up a lot of the features that we captured. The main building, what Lorraine and Jackson called building 2, was kind of here with this wall that's sort of a deep foundation. There's a brick floor, rubble floor, they weren't whole brick. We had these very mysterious brick alignments, another mysterious brick alignment, a giant blob of mortar, and then where the walls collapsed left these kind of discrete clusters of brick that had a lot of plaster in them, which was very interesting. A water line, again, those water lines, we keep finding them. And the fence was actually planted right into that wall. I mean, they dead center got it right on the foundation wall, which is kind of astounding. And then the old park road, which they mapped, this is here too, this old park road that we didn't see, we actually captured it here. So here's some of the brick alignment with that park road kind of really layer caking right on top of it. Didn't really go through it. Here's a little bit more of a close-up of the brick rubble floor. Again, we don't have a full explanation for what that might have been. You know, and we did have some good days. It was a little bit painstaking, sticking a brush between brick and trying to keep it stable, but we did have some rough days too. And so the longer we spent on this excavation, the more risky it got. And we didn't really want to lose stability of this. So really we had to pick a stopping point anyway at some point. So yeah, what we're looking at is something that had a lot of construction phases. Oh, one of our favorite kitty cat paw print that was baked into one of the bricks. Mr. Baylor loves that. He loves to show people when they come by. It's one of my favorites too. So I tried to kind of delineate some of these for you. And even in addition to these features and phases of construction, we've got Jackson Lorraine just kind of put their bricks back right there. Because if you look at the photo from their excavation, they took that brick out of that corner, and I guess they just redeposited it back on top. So there's all kinds of stuff going on here that's worth talking about. So the park's now thinking, you know, we might actually create this into its own exhibit, keep it exposed in like a very safe way. And so one of those ideas is taking one of the buildings we already planned to reconstruct, the Rucker Drugstore, and use its shell to protect these exposed brick features, so members of the public can actually enjoy it. So I hope it's something that they can come up with. This incidentally was the only photo of any of the target areas that they had. So this is actually what the Rucker Drugstore looked like. Rucker Drugstore was also located the same spot as Hatfield, and then it moved south a couple lots. Story for another day. Some notable artifacts we found. That it's an 1856 $quarter, and then we also found a sewing machine medallion from 54 to 57, made in New York, a piece of P-file splatterware, and a very cool little pocket knife with a bone handle. But we're still deep in these artifact analyses that hurts. We mined so many out of there. Once we got out of Jackson Lorraine's excavations, the artifact count went up. Bailey Gay and Hoxie, this is the last area I'm going to talk about. This was a store. It was named for Edward Bailey, Thomas Gay, and Asa Hoxie. Asa Hoxie allegedly was the man who gave Washington its name. It's not that remarkable. Allegedly, he named it after his hometown in Georgia, in Wilkes County. So Washington, Georgia. Yeah. Asa Hoxie. It was likely a store before it was their ownership in 1837. It was also a location for the Senate to use during its 7th regular session. Lorraine and Jackson termed this structure Building 4. They interpreted this as a 2-room building. And then in the middle of it would have been a double chimney facing each room. They believed it also to be one of the earliest buildings that they encountered in their excavations. They also found some adjoining post holes and a brick rubble floor kind of towards the top of the page that they indicate north of the foundation. So we focused our investigation on the vicinity of the fireplace and see if we could clip some of those features that they had previously identified. I mentioned earlier that geophysical inspection was met with a lot of challenges because of historic overprinting. So it's beginning to look like all the anomalies that we were targeting were pretty much just really nice artifact deposits, but not these in situ foundations. And what that tells us in terms of not being able to find these big brick features that are pretty close to the surface, that they probably weren't fired at a very high temperature. So they didn't exhibit that much of a magnetic field. So one of the goals was to supplement VM and magnetometer survey with GPR. GPR is not often our first choice. It has a lot of limitations in these kinds of investigations, but I mean, it's a nice area. It was easy to roll it around if you weren't stuck in a gopher hole, which I have plenty of videos of him getting stuck on gopher holes. But he started noting some reflections this day we were working together. So he put some PVC pin flags in the ground and it was right on top of this feature. So David there's recording it on the right. Michael's setting up more units so we can start getting exposed, and that's ultimately what it looked like. We chose not to profile it. Jackson Lorraine had already done that and noted how many brick courses there were. So we did a few more units to find some more stuff, and these were our first rectangular post molds. So we found 2 of them. The first one was a little ephemeral. I kind of mangled it, but you know, we salvaged it. But then we found this one southwest of it, and never in my career have I excavated a post mold and found wood inside of it. So we did, and then we sent it to Dr. Leslie Bush. She tells us it's Eastern red cedar. Unsurprising, right? We know that was kind of preferred for the frame buildings. So it's kind of nice to have that opportunity to send off some specialized samples for a project like this. And then this is just kind of another aerial, like here's the fireplace, here's one of the post molds, there was one more up here, you just can't see it anymore, and then this brick floor that they noted, we clipped that too. So now we're starting to really identify stuff. Before I get to conclusion, I just want to make some acknowledgements about all these people involved in this project. I mean, being a THC project, there are a lot of people consulting and collaborating. First and foremost, my crew and my laboratory leads. These people I got to handpick, never happens, but these are my friends. These are kick-ass archaeologists that never complained. I'm sure they didn't love being on the spot with tourists every day, but they were troopers and just an incredible team. Jonathan Failer in the top left, he's the park superintendent. I know he took a lot of pleasure in just kind of being slightly a part of this with us. He was managing construction, he was managing his whole staff and trying to get donor money for these park improvements. So he's a busy guy, but he knew so much about such discrete material that me and my team, I don't think we're really equipped to be ready for him. He could identify stuff on the fly because he had a passion for this. He really knows so much about this park. So he was a big pleasure to work with. Next to him, Sandra Rogers. Sandy is a steward. Some of you know her. She's a Texas archaeological steward. She's from the area. She drove 2 hours to work with us every week and sometimes multiple days a week. So she quickly became a member of our crew. Just a really wonderful person to work with, and we love working with her. Christopher Goodmaster, I know he was our specialist, but man, he's that guy on staff that mentors everybody because he just has so much wisdom. So if you need somebody to help you solve problems, Christopher is that guy for us on staff. So he's been great. And then Michael Moore on the top left, our historian consultant, he was out there every week helping us pivot and make snap decisions about where we were going to dig next. And he had that same kind of spark and passion that Jonathan had. And, you know, he was pivotal in a lot of this process. Design and Productions, Inc. for, you know, supporting this entire project. Members of the archaeological and historical divisions in the THC. Tim's bar. Tim knows what I'm talking about. And the volunteers. So sometimes it's not really about the discoveries you make, but the friends you make along the way. So in conclusion, we'll have more to say about this project in the near future when we start wrapping things up more. I would love for us to put together a symposium and bring people like Michael and talk about maybe more of our research questions probably next year. So that's something to look forward to. I hope you guys enjoyed learning about this and just kind of getting that comprehensive review of the work it took to get it to this point. It's lucky that we have a project like this that we get to share with the public because people want to know how archaeology is used today. They want to participate in it. So instead of turning on your TV to the 200th, disappointing episode of Oak Island, you can get your car and take your family to San Felipe or Washington and be a part of these exhibits, experience them and feel enlightened. So it's a neat thing. Thank you. You have time for questions.
You have time for questions?
Okay.
Always.
No history quizzing, but what do we got, Jimmy?
You have accolades, great presentation, Alex, on, Zoom.
I appreciate that, everyone.
Any questions in the room?
Roughly, what was the population from, say, when it was first the 1820s up to late Republic? Was the population
Well, it
fluctuating?
seems probably a few hundred in those first few years. And then I think it got up to about 1,000 or 2,000 during Stephen, if I recall correctly. But yeah, it would have been a few thousand.
Well, I know that they brought, via the river, they brought stuff in, imported. What, if anything, did they export out?
It was pretty much entirely cotton. Yeah, so they have really good agriculture in that area. It was prime for cotton production. And the steamboats just accelerated getting that out of there. So.
Yeah, any record of a cemetery or?
There is a Washington cemetery, the historic one. It's located, I think at least a kilometer southwest of the site. It was not on site.
So have you found any human remains?
Not a one, and even given all the pre-contact stuff we dug up, no human remains. That could have been a preservation issue or the gophers. Anyways, but yeah, no, definitely no sign of human remains. I think the town did a good job of keeping that cemetery where it was. Okay, any other questions?
Where did the water come from?
The water. They have a series of wells across the property. There are some cisterns and wells kind of poking out of the ground, and I didn't ask to find out which period they were from, but there's a series of wells in the town.
Any other questions? Okay. Everybody, please join me in thanking Alexandra for joining us this evening. You've already done it. Let's take one more. Thank you, everybody on Zoom, for joining us. And at 8:08 p.m., I will close the October 12th, 2024 meeting of the North Texas Archaeological Society. Hope to see you all out there this month at all of our variety of Texas Archaeology Month events. Thank you all.
Hey, yes, everybody on Zoom.